Hello, welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Lay, here with my co-host, Maddie B. Big week. The Steelers are the last undefeated team in the NFL. It looked like a convincing win. It was like the third quarter, and I thought, oh, wow, this is nice. Michigan blew out Minnesota on Saturday. The Steelers are blowing out Tennessee. It's a nice, relaxing weekend. And then Ben decided, nah, that's not good. I need to throw a couple interceptions here and let them get back into the game. What did you think of them?
They did exactly what Pittsburgh does. If they get a lead too quick, they end up just getting complacent. They're like, we're not going to run it up on anyone.
It was at the point where they didn't even need to be throwing the ball around. But I think that's where it hurts with James Conner. And I was hoping that when they went ahead and tried to get other running backs in the draft, like that maybe they would have someone that they could go to that's more of like a consistent runner. Like, let's just go ahead and eat the clock. But they went versatile and got guys that were similar to like Le'Veon Bell, like even like James Conner. They built him in that mold where you're going to kind of do everything, but you're not going to be the guy that just pound away the game. So they don't have anyone to just feed the ball to. They don't have like a Jerome Bettis. So then you're like taking shots downfield. It just seemed weird. At Tennessee, they were definitely desperate. And it was at the point where I was confident, like, okay, this team looks good. I don't think they were going to blow it just because the lead was so big, and they didn't. I mean, they tried. But at that point, it was kind of like, all right, this feels good for the playoffs. So I went back through and looked at some stats, and that's where I got some extra stats for the show today. I think the Steelers have been 12-4 three times with Mike Tomlin as head coach. Two of them, they went to the Super Bowl. This is the first time since like the 70s the Steelers have been undefeated this far into the season. So it's making me feel like they're going to have a good chance to make a deep run. It depends on two things, though. Do they stay healthy, and can Ben limit the turnovers? Because the main thing is it's a weird year. There are a ton of injuries around the league. It's so bad that, like, even playing fantasy football, it's ridiculous how many guys are out and you're trying to figure out lineups. Like, just go to ESPN's fantasy and it's all about, like, these guys are questionable. Who might be healthy this week? Like, who's not out? That's why, and it's tough to follow. And I know it's a mix of probably not having preseason games and then you're rushing into full speed and you have the coronavirus, because I picked up one of the receivers from Tennessee, and I didn't know if the other guy was going to be cleared. Corey Davis, I think. He was like on the coronavirus list, and I'm like, do I go with him? And in hindsight, yeah, I should have. It wouldn't have made a difference. But it's like, you don't know what you're going to do. So if the Steelers can keep that going, they're going to be in a good position. And I think for them to go deep, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Matt, I think that they need the home field advantage in the playoffs and potentially the bye week. What do you think?
I don't know that they need the home field advantage at this point, because with the lack of crowds and, like, if they're playing an empty Heinz Field, I don't think that it's that much of an advantage, other than it's the, like, maybe for opposing kickers that have to try to kick in the stadium, that maybe that's a factor. But I mean, as far as crowd control, like, they're not allowed, the fans aren't allowed in, so it really doesn't factor.
Fans aren't allowed in now. That could change because we're months away from that. I don't know. Because it seems like more teams are letting fans in, and they're letting more of them. I mean, the Steelers have been very conservative with the number of people they've let in. It's like 5,000 or something. They could easily do 3 or 4 times that if they wanted to, and be able to keep the distancing. I don't know about the sanitizing and all that stuff, but I feel like if they really wanted to, they could. And so maybe that will change if they make the playoffs. The main thing is, I think it's more of like a comfort routine type thing with some of these guys. The Steelers have a lot of young guys. And, I mean, I guess they did get hit with injuries. Devin Bush, I would assume he's out for the year. I don't know. And then his backup went out in the middle of the game. And I thought, great, how are you going to find an impact linebacker week 7 or week 8, whatever it is, in the NFL? Like, in a weird year, you're not going to do that. So it's not affecting the offense. Go ahead.
What's James Harrison doing?
He's hating on the Steelers. That's what he's doing. He's petitioning to get in the Hall of Fame as a Patriot. Didn't you know that? So, I mean, just looking at the year, it's gone a little too perfect. And I'm just looking at the Ravens and the Chiefs. I know the Ravens haven't won a playoff game with Lamar Jackson, and I think that's a big confidence thing. You don't want to give him that extra bump just being at home and having him familiar. Patrick Mahomes has a Super Bowl ring, so that's going to come down to if the Steelers end up matching up with them. You never know. Like, it's going to be a tough battle no matter what. But, like, I'm looking at the Ravens. That's the game that they need to circle and just keep winning. Win at home, make them travel to Pittsburgh. Get that extra bump, and then stay healthy. And I think one less game if you can get the bye week, because I think only one team gets to bye this year. I know I had the debate last week with myself, but I didn't look it up. So that's my big thing. Before I forget, we got a comment, Matt, about John Gruden. Did you answer that?
I did not.
Why not? And you know what? I almost messaged beforehand whenever Gruden took down the Chiefs because they beat them. And now they're what, 500?
Yeah, I think so.
And it's not a bad 500. They played my man, Tom Brady. Tom Brady is awesome. And I'll talk about it because I have some stats to back it up. But did you have any thoughts on Gruden before we get into that?
I mean, my thinking is when he took over the Raiders, it was a mess. And you're watching slowly this transformation of the roster that they went from not being competitive at all to now like knocking the Chiefs off and improving games. I think it shows that they're making the moves to build the roster to where they're going to be competitive.
Well, the big thing to me is they've lost to big teams except for the Patriots loss. In hindsight, that one looks bad. It was on the road. They beat the Chiefs on the road, and they lost to the Bills and the Buccaneers. I mean, the Bills are top of their division. The Buccaneers are on top of their division. The only team, like the Patriots have a losing record. That's the only bad loss they have right now. So looking at their schedule, I think they have a great chance of looking at the playoffs just because the rest of the AFC, it's not looking pretty. I mean, they're basically tied with the Dolphins right now, and I think that would be the additional playoff spot if it would come down between the Dolphins and the Raiders right now. I mean, the Dolphins won 2 in a row, but is that enough? They both have bad teams in their division. I don't know who their crossover teams are off the top of my head, so that's what I'm looking at. Luckily, they got some real clunkers down the stretch. They get to play the Jets, the Broncos. They have the Broncos twice. They do get to play the Dolphins on the 27th, and that, who knows, that could be the deciding game. So I know it's early. They have a big win. They also have a clunker of a loss. So if you flip that, and let's say they beat the Patriots, but they lost to the Chiefs, people would be saying, "Oh, they're a winning team, but they're just not at that top level yet." So we'll see what happens. I think a lot of the changes you talked about, Gruden kind of did to himself. So he probably
But I think some of it was also cap issues that they couldn't move. They were so bogged down with Amari Cooper and Khalil Mack that they had to move those pieces.
Yeah. And, I mean, it probably put them back a year or two, though. And they were a team that was built to take that run, and they never capitalized. when they were hot and made the playoffs. I think they won the division. And by doing that, not capitalizing, they let the Chiefs sneak in there. And now they're in division with one of the most talented teams for the next couple of years. So it's going to be a tough road for them. But we'll be keeping an eye on them because I know we have fans that definitely check that out and let us know about it. All right, my other big topic, Tom Brady. I was watching part of that game, and the Buccaneers have been on fire, and it made me think, oh, wow, he's doing really well. And everyone was saying, who's going to be the better team or the better legacy? Everyone was thinking that Tom Brady was going to leave and he would miss Bill Belichick, but it looks like it's the other way around. And so I saw some stats during the game, and I texted them to you guys because Bill Belichick has an overall losing record when he doesn't have Tom Brady. It's what is it? I had the full one, 56-67 without Tom Brady. I'm not sure if that's updated for the last couple games, but they're 2-4 this year. So if it doesn't include this year, it doesn't change it much. So that's a 45% winning percentage. And I thought, oh, wow, that's a big difference because Tom Brady right now, he's at 71% winning percentage without Belichick. First year away from the Patriots. And I know that's a small sample size, but Bill Belichick had a couple stints. And I know people are thinking, well, he coached at Cleveland. You have to be including Cleveland. If I take Cleveland's stats out, his record is 19-22. Practically the same without Tom Brady in New England. And that's being inflated with the year the Steelers won the Super Bowl, 2008, when he had Matt Castle, and they went 11-5. Didn't make the playoffs that year. So he had one high year without Tom Brady. Other than that, and that's included in the 19-22. So other than that, not good. He's pretty consistent, right around 45% winning percentage. I know I've made fun of Mike McCarthy, Ron Rivera for being around 500. But there's Bill Belichick minus Tom Brady. I'm giving you the hard numbers, Matt. What do you think?
It's interesting.
It made me think, and so just so that people didn't think like, oh, this you're taking these out of context, whatever. I compared them with Mike Tomlin because I thought, oh, that's another good case study. He has Ben Roethlisberger, a quarterback that has won multiple Super Bowls, also been injured a lot, so he hasn't had them. Now, granted, Ben hasn't gone to another team to get the opposite numbers like Tom Brady right now, but Mike Tomlin and Ben Roethlisberger, they're like 60-something% together. Without Ben Roethlisberger, Mike Tomlin's at 56%. He's 18-14 without him, so he has a winning record without Ben Roethlisberger starting. And so that's almost a one-to-one comparison with Bill Belichick and the Patriots, 19-22. So I thought that was pretty interesting where, I mean, just look at last year. They had, after Ben went out, they had a losing record. They were like 0-2 whenever he went out, and they ended up total 8-8. So they had a winning record without him last year. Just missed the playoffs. Maybe all those calls, and I was one of them, for Mike Tomlin's head, maybe that was a bad call, and I'm glad he's still there.
I think we've talked about this a lot, though. The one thing that both of them have in common is that their organizations were patient with them and understanding that when Brady had injuries, when Roethlisberger had injuries, that it's tough to try to change your offense around when you have your starting quarterback out, especially when your quarterback is the leader of your team and a lot of people are relying on him to kind of be that cornerstone of the offense. So, when I look at Belichick, though, the thing that kind of amazes me with it is that he had Castle that was like in that same like lineup as Brady, and was like, which quarterback did they take? They traded him off for picks, And then there was the issues with Garoppolo. And it makes me wonder that had he have not just given Garoppolo away to San Francisco, would there be this drop-off? Because now trying to take Cam Newton and plugging him into that hole, not really having that quarterback to operate the offense, how much of that's affecting him compared to if he would have just held on to Garoppolo and had him inserted to start right away.
Yeah, but I've been thinking about that, and it's not like Garoppolo is lighting it up. I mean, he was just benched in San Francisco a couple weeks ago. He's been battling injuries, and I know that he took them to the Super Bowl last year, but he has a winning record. Never really, I think the game started, he only started 2 games in New England. Like, it's a very small sample size. I know a lot of people say, like, oh, well, he's whoever, I think that's the narrative. Whenever Tom Brady comes out, Bill Belichick has the next quarterback ready to play. And he hasn't done that. And even whenever Cam Newton came out, it's not like he has another quarterback that he had ready to go like he used to have. He doesn't have that. I think some of the Cam Newton problems are whenever he comes in and they just run like that old college offense with him. Like I told you, they lost one game because they're running a quarterback draw at the goal line. It's like, why are you doing that in the NFL? He has so many other weapons. If you're going to do a sneak, get under center. Like, tell your line, like, okay, we're going to get that push. Why have him 5 yards back diving across? Like, to me, it just doesn't make sense. It's almost like Belichick took him. He's like, all right, this is going to be able to hold us over. What did you run in college? Okay, that's what we're going to run now. And in the NFL, it just doesn't work. I mean, he's missed a bunch of throws. They don't have him. He just looks like he's not in his comfort zone. Like, they don't have him running dynamic stuff, like getting out of the pocket. It's kind of just like going back in time. Like, oh, yeah, I remember seeing you do that at Auburn. Just run into the pile. So, I mean, it's not groundbreaking stuff. And so I think if you would get rid of him and like bring in another guy, it's like, okay, you've had that. You've had a chance. There have been pro-type guys. I mean, they had a chance at Nick Foles. He ended up with the Bears. It's like if you really wanted more of like a traditional passer, go for it. You had a chance. That was a Super Bowl winning guy. That I know the Bears coaching, I think, really screws Nick Foles over. Because I that came to my mind too. Whenever I was watching Cam Newton, I thought, like, I wonder what Patriots would do with Nick Foles just as like a stopgap. But then, like, this year at the Bears, they pick him up, and he's like, okay, I think he's, 1-1 as a starter? We don't know. So those are the 2 guys I'm going to be watching to see if Foles goes the rest of the year and what happens with Cam Newton. Maybe he thought Cam Newton would be able to just hold them over until they can get someone else, but I don't know. You got any other thoughts on that?
No.
Got anything else for the NFL?
Surprise. Atlanta lost another one in the dumbest way possible.
Now, I was going to talk about that because that was going to be my segue into college.
Yes.
Because, why? What are you doing? Before we get to that, let's go with the picks. Steelers, Ravens. Who do you got?
Oh, I'm going to keep the positivity going and go with the Ravens. They got injuries. They got banged up backs. I think the Ravens are going to knock Pittsburgh off.
I was going to say the same thing. I think it comes down to the wire, and it's a lot of pressure. But I'll go opposite. I'll say Steelers by 3.
Secretly, I want Pittsburgh to win, but I've been skeptical this whole time. I'm afraid to say otherwise.
Well, I thought they would lose to the Tennessee. I said that was the game, and they dominated them. I'm hoping that the turnovers kind of put a little scare into Ben, that he can kind of get back to it. I mean, turnovers also hit my man, Russell Wilson. They shouldn't have been in overtime either. They kind of did the same thing. You had a chance to go up big. You start throwing interceptions. Like, what are you doing? And then losing the game. At least the Steelers didn't have that happen. But we'll see going forward. But that's our big pick 'em. So I've been negative on the Steelers. I didn't think they'd beat Tennessee. They kind of matched up well. The Ravens have been the other team where I think the Steelers, they match up with them because they're just so familiar with them over the years that I think that they can get the win even if it's on the road. And this will go a long way in locking up home field advantage, at least through part of the playoffs. So let's get it done. That's the big game. Don't really have any other picks. So let's get back into that Falcons game. So they sign him. That was Gurley, right?
Yes.
So they get him in. And I'll give him the benefit of the doubt because he got hit. He kind of like made a cut, like he knew he was going to try to go down, but he got hit by another linebacker. This is about at the 5-yard line. And I think that threw him because he made the initial cut, and I thought he was just going to slide. But he got hit, and maybe I'm just giving him too much credit. But then he got hit, and it kind of like, it didn't push him forward like he said. He said, oh, yeah, the momentum. Like, why did you even try to run him over to begin with? And that's what really stuck with me. Because, like I said, he hit that guy at the 5. So even if you made the cut and you were going to, like, run it long, because, like, that's what I thought. Like, oh, he's going to just go parallel with the end zone when he gets rid of this guy. But he never really got rid of him. He just cut back towards the end zone and then tried to stop, but it was already too late. It was hysterical. I was laughing so hard because he tried to, like, stop, and he didn't even turn. Like, you would think that you would turn the ball away from the end zone.
Well, you would think after all the spectacles from Saturday's games that every NFL coach would have talked about that, or at least made a note of it for their game plans of situational awareness.
And I was giving them the benefit of the doubt because maybe NFL coaches, they don't have time to check in on college all the time. So maybe he didn't see the play. But he even pointed out that he did the same thing, or he didn't do the same thing. He did the correct thing last year. So he said he was aware of the end-of-game situations. But just go down. It was almost like, okay, yeah, I should be going down, but I need this touchdown. So he just, like, fell in. And then Matt Stafford, I thought, well, I was thinking Matt Stafford's never going to lead this drive. This is the Lions' pure one-pass interception to end the game. Like, that's what I thought. So I'm wondering if he thought the same thing. And he thought, yeah, I'll keep my fantasy owners happy. Let me just fall into the end zone here. Because I bet some people were excited about that touchdown.
They saw him pulling up, and they're like, get in the end zone, get in the end zone.
That's why I thought he was going to slide. It was, I think it might have been in that same Seahawks game with the Cardinals. They were talking about how Murray can slide because he was a baseball player. It's like, they should teach every quarterback the correct way to slide. Some of these jokers, it's like, who is their coach that you can't slide correctly? And I'll point out, like, the Andy Dalton. He was sliding like a good slide. I thought that guy definitely targeted, knocked him out. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's not a target. I don't know what targeting is anymore, Matt. Because 2 years ago, everything was cut and dry, and they were all about player safety. And now, the same thing in college, because I saw I think there was a couple questionable hits in the Ohio State-Nebraska game, and then in the Penn State-Indiana game, there were a couple shots to the head, because Indiana went up for a catch. The guy launched into the air, which the rule book says you cannot launch into the air. Like, if the guy jumps up, that's the easiest way to injure him. And then the announcer was like, oh, I guess he thought that was a good launch. I'm like, they said 2 years ago you can't launch at all. So now Penn State's just launching right into him, knocking the guy out. And that's why I was just thinking, like, coaches should just tell their guys, like, hey, if you're shaken up, because the Indiana guy was down. He was definitely shaken up by the hit. Just stay down. Because you might get the flag that way. Like, hold your head. Because if a guy launches at you, you know you jumped into the air to try to make the catch, and the guy jumped up and almost hit you in the head. I mean, he hit him in the shoulder, but just because they're both like 2-3 feet in the air, of course he's going to fall down on his head. Like, And that's the whole point of taking out the launching. But going back to the Andy Dalton one, it's like the same thing. Why are you leading with your helmet? I think that's what they said in the Ohio State game. They were like, I think, was it Nebraska that did it? I can't remember. They both were in similar colors. So going back in my head doesn't work. But I want to say that head down. And then they were like, well, there's nothing more he could do there. Yes, there is. Keep your head up. Keep your head up. You've been talking about it for like 3 or 4 years. Just eject him. If his head's down, eject him. There's already too many injuries this year. The Cowboys, I mean, like, what are they going to do? Dalton wasn't even playing good, but they shouldn't even be down to the situation because of it. So that's my last rant for Buff. I don't know if you saw anything like that, but it stuck out with me this week.
Well, I think just with Andy Dalton getting hurt and the comments that McCarthy made of, like, you guys didn't stick up for your quarterback and, like, you should have retaliated. Like, I don't know. At this point, I don't even know if he's going to survive the year. Like, he just made up all these, like, oh, yeah, I do analytics. I sit in my house and just kind of game plan.
That's why I said, look at the numbers. Bill Belichick could be worse than that. Plus, you also have the Spygate and all those other controversies. How poor would his record be without those?
We're not going to speculate on that.
All right, but keep with the coaching thing. James Franklin, Matt. He has to be leaving Penn State, right? Because the ceiling has been reached. I'll put this out there. So, James Franklin bought a house in Florida. I don't know if people know that. He just randomly moved his family to Florida. He said it was because of the coronavirus. He's like, yeah, we're just going to move out of Pennsylvania. We're tired of it here. And then the poor recruiting. Penn State's recruiting right now is the worst it's been since the sanctions. They're below Michigan State. They're below Missouri. They're below, they're like in the 30s. I don't even know who else they're behind. Pitt, maybe. But I'm looking at it and I'm wondering, like, why? What are they doing? I know they have been recruiting in, like, New Jersey hard. But, like, Shano didn't make that bump where he comes in and then Penn State just immediately gets cut off. Like, that wouldn't have happened. So they're just missing on top guys. I don't know what their problem was because they were recruiting so well. So, poor recruiting class coming in. They had how many people leave their program? And so this was supposed to be a strength of James Franklin. And then you also have their running back issues, which I sent to you so I don't mess it up. But Journey Brown was announced that he's going to be out. They never really said what he had, but they speculated that he's going to be gone for the year. That was their starting running back. Noah Cain came out in a boot during that Indiana game. He's supposed to be done for the year. And so you're losing your top 2 running backs. Parsons already opted out, your best defensive player. You had a couple other defensive guys leave. And you come into the year, it's like, how much of this is on James Franklin? Because it seems very similar to what happened with Michigan State, where, remember when Mark D'Antonio, he just, decided to just give up? And they were having weird player issues where people were just leaving. They were, trying to say it was locker room issues. Then recruits were decommitting. And then he just retired, right before signing day.
You mean like when Jimbo Fisher was just like, nah, I'm out. See you later.
That's what it feels like to me. And I'm not saying that he's going to move to Florida and, take a job because I would think Florida State's not going to fire Norvell after 1 year.
No.
Miami's doing well. And the Gators are doing pretty good. None of those teams are in a position to get rid of their guys. So to move there, maybe it's a temporary move. I don't know. Maybe it was a coronavirus thing. But there are a lot of signs right now that point to him not being 100% in with Penn State. And I'm not getting any insider notes where they're telling me, yeah, James Franklin's going to move. There were rumors last year that he was heavily looked at for USC. USC kept their coach. People were baffled by it. I said maybe they're waiting on Urban Meyer. Maybe they're waiting on James Franklin. This was supposed to be their best shot at a playoff spot since the 2016 year. You had a bunch of guys coming back. Once guys opt out and get injured and you're like down, you need to be able to take in-game coaching. And he had some of the worst in-game coaching moments down the stretch that I was just baffled by it. Like Penix for the Hoosiers, the quarterback, I watched the game. He wasn't as accurate as their quarterback last year. He might be more athletic and give them other dimensions. Why are you just blitzing him and then letting him get to the second level? Like, do you not realize that he's throwing the ball crazily high, like completely low? Like, there's a reason I talked about the guy, Penn State's defender, having to launch up into the air to hit the Indiana guy because he's not accurate. Why are you letting him? I mean, you're getting like penalties on defense. You're just letting him get past your blitz because he's able to run out of the pocket. And then you're letting him throw like one-on-ones. Like, just go into a zone. Like, try to eat up some of the clock. And then you have your own thing. You have the ball. I would say a lot of people were like blaming it on the running back for scoring. And I did point out that they're down a couple running backs, so maybe they didn't have a guy with good in-game experience. I'm not sure on Penn State's depth at running back. I really wouldn't blame him. But obviously Indiana let them score that touchdown. They didn't even try on defense. They kind of lined up and then just let him go. And he knew it because when he got to like the goal line, he was like, is the play dead? Am I supposed to be doing something else? Because he kind of turned around. He didn't try to fall down like Gurley, so he didn't think that he was supposed to like go down. He just was wondering like, why isn't anyone tackling me? And so I think that was the body language I got. And it was kind of like, yeah, Indiana just let them score. And then the 2-point conversions, like I said, why are you blitzing him?
What's that though that he scored the touchdown on?
Which one?
What down was that? Was that a third down that he scored on?
No, it was a first down, I think.
Because that was the thing that I didn't understand was that they had the ball in the red zone. Why didn't you just take a knee?
Because they had a timeout. So the time would have worked out where there was like 1:40 left. And so if you take a knee, they take a timeout, then you're going to get to a fourth down, and they're going to have like 20 or 30 seconds left. They kick the field goal. I mean, you're giving them a Hail Mary shot. You run and get the first down. It only takes one first down, then you need the game's over. So I think most coaches in that scenario, they run, get the first down, tell their guy like not to score, or like you said, take a knee, get them to burn the timeout. I think a lot of times coaches get them they run a play, get them to burn the timeout or just wait and see what they do. Because some coaches wait to see. Because like, what if he fumbles? You don't want to burn it on the first down. Let it eat some clock and try to save it in case you can set up a field goal chance. So there are a couple ways you can play it on defense, but I mean, it was definitely the smart coaching move. Let him score. We'll have 1:30 to go downfield and a timeout.
Because I know definitively, like that's an easy hindsight call to say. Oh, my initial reaction was that they were trying to save face, that it was try to score the extra touchdown, so that it looks a little bit better in the polling that we didn't just win like 21-20 or whatever the final could have been had they have just tried to take the knees and not score the extra points.
No, I think the problem is most coaches have the card. You know, they always talk about it. It like tells you when to go for two, when to take a knee. Like, I honestly think that instead of just having a clock guy, like they should just hire a stats guy to be either in the booth. Like, I would gladly do it. Like, just get me in the booth, sit there and calculate and say, like, hey, make sure he doesn't score here, but we need a first down or they're going to be able to stop it and get the ball back if we just take some knees. Because, like, that's another thing, too. You start to take knees, you're moving back 2 yards, 2 yards, 2 yards. You're making it a longer field goal on yourself. Because they were only up by, 1 at that point?
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's another thing, too. You take 3 knees and kick the field goal, it gets blocked. They only need a field goal to win then. And they have 30 seconds or whatever would have been left to do it. So,
well, even if you take the knees and you run the clock down to under a minute and you just go for it, in hindsight, they have to go the length of the field then to come back and win.
yeah, but that's exactly what Seahawks just won doing a couple weeks ago, and I complained about it. They were like, oh, yeah, we're just going to go for it on 4th down instead of kicking the field goal. Like, at least make it so that they need to go. Like, I think that scenario, they would have needed to go for 2 if they would have kicked the field goal. Like, do whatever you need to do to make it harder on them. Like, don't just let them score a touchdown and win the game. Like, that's just ridiculous. So that's why I said I think a lot of these coaches, they just look at it and say, this is what we're going to do. Let's just try to end it. Penn State, and that's not even, like, I'm not even pointing that out. There were other just, like, weird play calls and things down the stretch that, like I said, the defensive philosophy was off because you're giving them a minute and a half then, and you're still blitzing, playing man. Like, you're giving him one-on-ones where he's just throwing comebacks. 10-yard comebacks. Like, put some linebackers out underneath in the flat and try to get those picked off or knock them down. Like, you're Penn State. You should not need to be blitzing multiple guys when Indiana's clearly doing quick throws. You're going to make your defense tired, which is what I think happened down the stretch. And then on the 2-point conversions, put a spy on him. Why are you blitzing like, it was like an all-out blitz. And then he just ran right in. The first one, I was like, are you kidding me? I don't even know who's calling the defensive plays, but at some point, you have to get your best guy out there and say, look, you do whatever you're spying him. Do not let him run the ball in. At least hold him up. Even if you can't get him, hold him, like, try to, like, slow him up until someone else gets him. Like, you just need to make him throw the ball. He's not accurate. Like, make him throw the ball, and they weren't doing it. So, I mean, it should have been on preparation, I would think. They could have put the game away early, though. I just don't know. Like, looking at that, and then you go ahead. It's not the first time that he's had a poor end-of-game situation, and then you go into this Ohio State game, confidence has to be low. Like, for them to go in and get an upset this weekend, it would be an upset for the ages, I think. I know they're at home. Do you think they have any chance of pulling that off?
No.
I mean, Penn State, they already have a loss. Their schedule, and I mean, this is saying people aren't going to be injured or whatever, but I think, do they play Wisconsin still? Let's pull it up because I know they play Iowa. They could realistically go. I know it's a shortened schedule. Who are they going to, like, they're going to beat down the stretch? Oh, they play Nebraska. So that should be a win. Like, they lose this game. The Michigan game, right now they're looking at 5-3, possibly 4-4. I don't know. I mean, Maryland's bad. I don't think Rutgers is good, but I mean, Michigan State had a bunch of turnovers. I don't know what Michigan State's going to do this year, but I thought the same thing. They're very similar to Penn State in the amount of turnover they had. I wasn't shocked by Rutgers beating them. I even picked it before the game. And everyone's like, why are you picking Rutgers? I'm like, because Rutgers is going to go ahead and surprise people. They have Shiano back. And Michigan State is a dumpster fire. There's no way they're going to be ready to go week 1. Will they show up against Michigan? Most likely that's been their thing. They're probably game planning for Michigan the entire offseason because they know, like, that's their best chance this year. That's why the Rutgers game was a loss. I know they had some fluke fumbles, but there's no way. Like, that's where I think Penn State's going with this. This is their big game. This is their Michigan State, Michigan. They're playing Ohio State. They need to win. If they get killed, I don't think they show up for the Michigan game, and I think they get blown out again on the road. I mean, James Franklin hasn't been close in the Big House. The last couple were like 40-something to 10.
What I don't understand is that they had Penn State ranked in the top 10. You lose to unranked Indiana. How do you justify getting to stay in the top 25?
Matt, I'll tell you this. I think some of those pollsters, they don't watch the game. If you watched the Minnesota-Michigan game and you had both teams' rosters, they had so many mistakes on who's who. Even ESPN, Chris Evans, a running back that's been with Michigan, I know he was off the team last year. He's had big runs. They put up the wrong picture for him. I mean, it's not like it's a freshman guy coming in. This is your game of the week. And I know Michigan played a lot of freshmen, and I know Minnesota had to too because of the coronavirus cases they had. So both teams had a lot of freshmen playing. This is your game of the week, though. Like, you should not be mispronouncing guys' names. You should not have wrong photos on it. I was baffled by it. So, I mean, it's going to be like that for the rest of the year, I think. Because while I'm on that, so don't forget, Wisconsin right now, they played a freshman quarterback, Graham Mertz, played outstanding. The Big Ten has a problem where they announced that if you get coronavirus, you're out for 3 weeks. Guess what, Matt? Wisconsin's quarterback room got hit. Mertz is out, and the other backup, I didn't get his name. He wasn't at practice today. He's in quarantine protocol to see if his second test comes back positive. They're going to be on their fourth string quarterback because they already lost their starting guy, I think, for the year. So they lose their starting quarterback. Everyone's like, oh, what's Wisconsin going to do now? So I think that's where you get a lot of these pollsters, going back to your question. Like, they look at Wisconsin. How do you rank them? You don't know. Like Penn State, you lose Parsons, you lose your top 2 running backs. Should they be top 10? I don't think so. Like, you're ranked on your roster, and I don't think because of the late start, I don't think poll voters made that adjustment because they just don't know.
Well, right, and that was my argument last week. It was when you have teams that have played 4 games and you know what they are, they should be ranked. Like a team like Liberty right now that's undefeated should be close to the top 10 right now. They've played multiple games. They've won everything convincingly. They deserve to be up there. But to try to leave some of these other teams hang around, like, for example, if and I'm trying to think off the top of my head more recently, but like when Florida State was ranked and they lost to unranked Virginia Tech, they were completely out of the top 25 with no chance of redemption. You know, like, and I understand if you lose to an unranked team, like if it happens in the Big 12, if Oklahoma State were to lose, you know they're going to fall out. Like there's going to be no getting back. But for like Auburn can lose and they'll go from 6 or 10 or wherever, and they
can they? Have you seen the refs in their games, Matt?
But they just when they lose, it's like they'll go from 4 to 8. They'll drop like the smallest bit. Where like any other conference is like, oh hell no, you're gonna fall at least 30 spots in the rankings.
But that's where I think they're basing a lot of that on roster talent, and the roster talent doesn't reflect opt-outs, doesn't reflect guys that are leaving or injured. So they're looking at Penn State and they're saying, holy crap, James Franklin, he's been recruiting like a top 10 class. They are going to be a top 10 team. They have a look at all these guys returning, and that's where we're going to put them. And then they don't look at like the other problems that they have. They go to Indiana. They had Indiana high. I don't know if they were voted or receiving votes, but everyone had picked them to be that fourth, fifth team in the Big Ten East. Because, like I said, Michigan State was going to have a drop-off. There's no way Indiana's not going to be up there. And so I think people were like, we're expecting Indiana to be good. And I think it's just a one-game sample. The Liberty one, I think for sure they should be up there. I'll throw NC State out there. I didn't think NC State should have been ranked this past weekend. They got blown out by North Carolina. And I think it comes down to like some of the players, but their quarterback gets hurt. You're going to be playing a young, it was like a freshman quarterback, redshirt freshman. It's like you're going to be playing a backup quarterback, and at that point, do you rank them based on their wins, or do you go back? Because whenever they got their first loss, they were killed by Virginia Tech because their quarterback was out with coronavirus. Now he's out with a significant injury for multiple weeks. I had a feeling they were going to go back to the team we saw week 1. That's what happened. So it's like, okay, the poll voters at this point, I think nothing is going to be equal. So like if they're looking at that NC State team, do they say like, okay, well, of course we have to put Indiana above them. Do we keep Penn State above them? They lost in overtime on a 2-point conversion that could have went either way. And so I want to get your thoughts on that.
But the thoughts are, like you just said it best, Indiana's the 4th or 5th best team in their division. Like it's not even like they're the number 2 team in the conference.
Well, hold on, because they beat Penn State. They beat Penn State, so now they're the 3rd best man.
But you just said 4th or 5th within the division. You didn't even say in the Big Ten. So how do you? And you lost, and they lost to them yet to boot. That's the butt kicker. They lost. So it doesn't matter if it's regular. Like if you're a top 10 team, you don't lose to an unranked, like mid-major in your conference. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, but it's only one loss. I think that's where people are hung up. I think if everyone was on their first week, there have been so many teams that have just looked sloppy. So in 3 weeks, I could look like an idiot. James Franklin could turn this around, beat Ohio State, keep going. They could crush Michigan. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But just based on that, looking around the league, 3 teams in the Big Ten came out ready to play. Everyone else was kind of like lackluster.
Which was why I felt like maybe because there have been so many other teams that have started the year off that were willing to kickstart the season, why should the Big Ten get rewarded with these higher rankings right off the bat when they've proved nothing? And it's just they're gift-wrapped a handful of top positions just because of whatever. Like I feel like there should have been something like knocking those rankings down a little bit for not having the balls to be willing to start the season when the rest of the other conferences were starting to get things going.
Well, I think that's where the big kicker is the non-conference games. Like the Big Ten and the SEC, I think because this year is so strange, they made the right call. By not having them, there's no blemish now. Like Indiana, they might end up 4-4. They have the Penn State win. What's their bad loss? I mean, unless they're losing to Maryland, like they're not going to have one. I mean, Rutgers could end up with 3 or 4 wins. We don't know yet. Where the Big 12, since you brought them up, they screwed themselves because they lost 3 games to the Sun Belt. So, like anyone looking at that, now you can say, like, why does the Big 10 or Big 12 deserve a chance? Like their top teams, unless Oklahoma State wins out, or like they can get in with 1 loss, I would think, depending on who they lose to. Because if they lose to a team that lost to a Sun Belt team, it's like, why? That's a crappy, like there's no way Cincinnati should be cut out. BYU should be cut out for a Big 12 team that has a loss to a team from the Sun Belt. Like it just shouldn't happen. Because you can't tell me, oh, well, Cincinnati, their division's lower, they didn't play anyone. Like, get out of here. The Big 12 already has their top teams out. Oklahoma, they're done. There should be 0 chance for Oklahoma to jump BYU or Cincinnati. Liberty, like you said, they have been playing. They haven't really played anyone, but they will get to because the ACC made the same mistake. If Liberty crushes NC State with their injuries, could be possible, and Virginia Tech, and they go undefeated, I think you have to take notice because you can't say like, oh, well, they didn't play anybody. And then like be like, well, you can't say that Oklahoma's in just because of their recruiting because they already have 2 losses or whatever they have. Like they're done. There's 0 chance for them to get in. And that's where I think the Big Ten, even though they came late, they made that smart decision by saying like, look, we're not going to play non-conference. We're going to play each other one more time because they're going to do that crossover. And like I said, it might work out. Because what if like, let's say Wisconsin, they lose to Michigan because we don't know if their quarterback's coming back. I don't know what the 21 day is, because you're going to have a guy that wasn't able to be at practice for 3 weeks, a freshman, randomly just show up on Saturday and go against Don Brown's defense. I mean, it doesn't look like it's a good defense this year, but that's still a crazy ask for a freshman to be like, hey, we know you haven't been practicing and you've been having trouble breathing, but we kind of need you. So, and we're on the road, by the way. So you're going to be playing in the big house. Luckily, there won't be fans there, so it won't be as bad for you. But come on, sir. Come on, kind sir, let's go. Like, that's not realistic. So you have a team like that now that's going to benefit because maybe they finish second. Maybe they lose that game to Michigan, have to play Michigan again in that end of game year, get that bump, and then end up in the Rose Bowl or something. Like, we don't know. But that's much better than saying, oh, yeah, by the way, Wisconsin, you still have to play, I don't even know, like some other MAC team. Like, what if they had scheduled Cincinnati and now they're starting quarterbacks out and they lose that game? Like, it's just a bad look for the Big Ten. And luckily, they don't have that. So it's looking like Wisconsin. And the Big Ten is also doing if your team is out, you're forfeiting. Like Baylor's been losing games, and so has like Virginia Tech. Like, they've been trying to reschedule them. The Big Ten waited so long, they kind of screwed themselves. We could have like a 5-win Wisconsin as the West champion. We don't know. Like, there's no guarantee that they can play this week because we don't know how many people are out, how many people have been testing. I think they said if it's more than 5%, they have to cancel. And it's a no contest. So, I mean, also, Michigan and Minnesota played. How do we know there's not positives on either side because Minnesota already had a bunch of guys out? We don't. Like, that Mertz test was on Saturday, they said. So he shouldn't. I guess they played Friday, huh? Is it the Friday game? I think it was. So luckily, that's what kind of saves them for the Michigan game. I guess this 21 days would be up that Saturday they play Michigan. I don't know. But again, like the pollsters, if Wisconsin were to lose like 2 games when he's out, you move them all the way up to the top 10. Do you drop them all the way out? Like, what do you do? You don't know. So that's my thing. The Big Ten holding on, waiting for that. Also, just to toot my own horn, did I say, Matt, Tennessee was like the Southern Michigan? There's no way they're going to compete in a rivalry game. People were like, oh, yeah, Tennessee, let's rank them real high. Like, how did that pay off for you? Like, there's zero chance. It's not even like Tennessee's beating other good teams. Like, let's be honest. At least Harbaugh is crushing other ranked teams. They destroyed 11-win Nebraska, Notre Dame last year. Like, they crushed Notre Dame so bad that the announcers were making excuses saying it's raining. Maybe they don't want to be there. And so, like, Harbaugh has those wins. Tennessee doesn't have any win like that. So it's like, why are you ranking them high?
They could beat Georgia, and then they'll just drop Georgia like 3 spots. Well, it was an SEC game.
No, because that's kind of a rivalry, Matt. You can't win rivalry games. It's very Michigan-like. That's what I'm saying. If Michigan's colors were orange, you could just put a sign that has Tennessee, Texas, and Michigan. It'd all be the same. That's the only thing separating them right now is the color scheme. But yeah, Tennessee now, how high were they ranked? They're 2-3 now. It's like you got killed by Alabama. What was the score against Georgia? 44-21. You didn't show up against Kentucky. And it's like, why? I know Mike Leach has had his issues since they beat LSU. But, like, you could have at least had some ups. Now you just have the downs. So it's like, okay, I guess that's good. But, yeah, but going back to the Sun Belt, like Coastal Carolina right now is 5-0. If they go undefeated and have a conference that beat 3 Big 12 teams, why would they not be ranked higher than the Big 12? Like, there's zero reason. Like, if you're doing because in basketball they do the Big 10 ACC Challenge, and then they usually use that again for the seeding in the tournament. They're always like, yeah, remember that one conference is a little bit better this year. The Big 12 and Sun Belt had their own version of that. And guess what conference is better this year? The Sun Belt. So So there should be, unless, like I said, unless Oklahoma State, because I think Mike Gundy deserves a shot, goes undefeated, there should be no chance. Because it's going to be hilarious if Kansas State wins the Big 12 because they lost to Arkansas State. Mind blown. It's like, what? And people can't be saying, well, put Kansas State in. Because at that point, it would be so rigged. I think they would have a gigantic lawsuit if a Sun Belt team was like, look, they lost to one of our teams. Why would you put them into playoffs instead of one of our undefeated teams? And I'm not saying Coastal Carolina is going to go undefeated, but I think this is a year where they have a clear-cut case, like I've said. They could easily do an expanded playoff with auto bids for every conference and then at large for like your Georgias and your Michigans for teams that don't win their conference. So I'll say they could easily do that, Matt. And then just everyone would be happy. Because then you'd have some big matchups, maybe some blowouts. Notre Dame could sneak in there. They don't play in the conference, although they're looking good. I mean, the ACC's down. Just I'm going to go through my thing, and then that's going to be the end of the show. So, or for me, Cincinnati undefeated, so you have a chance from the AAC. ACC is down to 2 teams, Clemson and Notre Dame right now. Big 12 is only Oklahoma State. The Big 10, I'm not going through their teams. They're half and half. But I would say right now, based on first week, it's Ohio State and Wisconsin. I still don't think Michigan beats Ohio State, so you could throw them in there, but I don't think it's going to happen. You have Marshall, BYU, and Liberty. We already talked about them. Then you have, Boise, but they just started playing, so I should be leaving their conference out because there's a bunch of them. The Pac-12 didn't start yet. You have Alabama, and then you have Coastal Carolina. So that's it right now. I mean, the Pac-12 is going to play, so you could potentially throw in like Oregon. But I really don't think with only 4 teams that you're going to have 2 from each conference or 2 from any conference unless you get like some crazy stuff to happen where Wisconsin just keeps winning without their quarterback and somehow like they get coronavirus and they end up not playing Ohio State and they're both undefeated. Or, like I said, Notre Dame just decides that they're just going to be done with the ACC so they can get in the playoffs, and they're not going to play in their championship game. I don't know. Those are the only scenarios that I think that you get 2 teams in. Because, like I said, I don't think anyone's going to beat Alabama this year. And even if they did, like you're going to have to play. Georgia's going to have to play them again. Georgia's not going to beat them. So, case closed. They do have your boy Jimbo Fisher, though, ranked 8th right now. What are your thoughts on that?
Overrated. I think A&M is overrated right now.
They lost to Alabama, Matt. They don't play another ranked team after the Florida win right now. Now, of course, they play LSU and Auburn, so like you mentioned earlier, they might be ranked by the end of the year to play them. But they could be looking at a 1-loss season. Maybe that would be the team to sneak in, but I really don't think. Like if you have a team that has 1 loss between Michigan and Texas A&M, I don't think that they would put A&M in over Michigan. I guess it depends on the loss though, because A&M already lost to Alabama by 20. If they come down to the wire against Ohio State, I don't think they'd jump them. Now, if they get killed by like 30 by Ohio State, maybe. But that's just one example. There are plenty other like Notre Dame and Clemson. The A&M's not going to jump the loser of that game if it's a close game. Now, if they have to play twice, that's a different scenario. But you got anything else for college football?
I just think the playoff this year is going to be the Holy War. BYU, Liberty, and Notre Dame.
Holy War, Matt, because people are going to be complaining about you. The Holy War is BYU and Utah. I was going to say, you think Utah's going to win the Pac-12?
No. It'll be Liberty.
No, I'm saying...
You freeze, baby.
I'm saying if teams like Cincinnati and like potentially Coastal Carolina get left out of the playoffs, they have a legitimate gripe this year. Because the other teams didn't play. And like I said, it really skews it if Oklahoma State somehow gets in, or like I said, Kansas State gets in. That would be the worst scenario for the NCAA.
Here for everyone to be a national champion, just to have like 4 national champions.
Hey, I did remember how we made fun of that, and you said, "Would Michigan claim it?" Yes. Go back to 1918, Spanish flu. Michigan played only like 5 games that year. National champs, baby.
Go to southboundsports.com. I'm done. I'm done
Hey.
on that.
Oh, we forgot to talk about Claysburg. I still had the old game up. Your game was canceled, right?
Yes, our game was canceled due to coronavirus from the other school.
Yeah. So for people that were looking at it, I was confused myself, and I just forgot to put it up and put a message up. So I didn't see the game, and to be honest, like the alert came up that said there was no game, but your next game was going to be against Bellwood. That's why I texted you that. So I was like, oh, that's not good.
And that's not accurate either because Bellwood won their playoff game. So the game is this Friday at home, and the opponent is Glendale. So what would have been our initial week 1 matchup is now being played this week.
So good luck with that. I forgot to hit that off the top of the show. I was too fired up about the Steelers being undefeated and Bill Belichick having a losing record without my man Tom Brady. So I forgot to bring it up. But yeah, go to the website on Friday. If it's canceled, let me know. I'll put a note up this time. Because people were like, hey, is Matt having a game? I'm like, yeah, they're supposed to be, but I can't find the feed. So I just figured you were playing someone that didn't have a live feed. And I should have put a message up on the thing like there's no feed or text you, but I didn't want to bother you as you're getting ready for the game. Like, hey man, can't find the game. Like, so
nope, you could have messaged me because I was like you. I was just sitting at home.
I was watching that Wisconsin beatdown. I thought, wow, Wisconsin's looking really good. So go to the website, southboundsports.com. Like I said, if Matt's going to have a game, it's there. I kept the old feed so you could watch one of his old games that was up there. And then get our latest episodes, get a couple messages. People, go to the southboundsports.com, try to find them. I know the feed might be different on Google Play app or something. I'm looking into it. So if you message me about that, I'll be getting back to that and trying to get that fixed. But if there's anyone else that uses like a different app or something, let me know. But the feed's out there. You can listen to it directly on our website. So check it out there. We keep doing it Tuesdays. It goes up on Wednesday. And we will see you next week. So thanks for listening.